Hi, I'm Stacy LeBaron, and this is another edition of Chelsea Hubcats. Today we have Katie Rogers joining us, who's a freelance photographer, and she also represents katierogersart.com. And in addition to that, we have our usual co-host, Laura Appleton, who's on the outreach committee of Chelsea Hubcats and my partner in crime. So thank you again for joining me today.
And Oliver.
And Oliver, hi, Oliver. He is becoming a regular with us, and he's very well behaved and always has something to share, but I think he might go back to sleep. So Oliver is with us today as part of the crew. So Chelsea Hubcats is a nonprofit organization that was founded about 2 years ago to focus on the needs of cats in Chelsea. And as we expanded, we decided to also focus on dogs. So we currently offer free spay-neuter for cats for the residents of Chelsea. We offer subsidized spay-neuter for dogs, and we have one large vaccination and microchipping clinic in Chelsea that's free for cats and dogs. So we work really hard to help make sure that the cats and dogs in Chelsea are taken care of. To date, if you can believe it, we have assisted over 1,800 cats and dogs, which I think is a pretty big number. And if you're interested in finding out more about our work, please go to hubcatschelsea.com. You can find us on Facebook, join the team to make a difference, and our number is 857-776-2287, or you can always email us at hubcatschelsea@gmail.com. So on today's show, we're going to talk about taking pictures of your pets and photography. And then we're also going to talk a little bit about missing pets, lost and found pets, and how to get your pet assistance if your cat or dog does go missing. So Katie, I'd first like to welcome you and thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's my pleasure.
So we're first going to talk about photography. Tell us a little bit about the work that you do and what your passion is around taking pictures of animals.
My background is in photojournalism. I actually do a lot of work with the Chelsea Record, which is the local newspaper in Chelsea. I know we've covered some Hubcat stories in the past. My background is that I went to art school. I went to Montserrat College of Art in Beverly, Massachusetts. And while I was there, I discovered that I knew I was very passionate about visual arts. During summer vacation one time, Adam Sandler was actually filming a movie in Everett, and I had taken in Everett, at the high school, at the former high school. So that was huge news for Everett because, you know, exactly. So,
Everett.
yeah. So I grabbed my camera and I went down, and there was no other reporters there, and I snapped some pictures of him and I sent them to a local newspaper. And this was right before the 4th of July, and then when 4th of July rolled around, by then the picture had made the front page, and I was like, wow, that was pretty cool. Just sort of a hobby thing. 4th of July, I was at a barbecue with my parents, and I met the editor of the Chelsea Record, Carrie Schumann, and he had seen my picture in the other newspaper, a competitive newspaper, the week before, and he said, do you want to take some photo jobs for us? And I said, yeah, that sounds pretty cool. And it kind of just spiraled from there. And interestingly, sort of on an unrelated note, I have a tie to Chelsea because although I'm Everett born and bred, half of my house is actually in Chelsea and half is in Everett.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So
how do you get your mail? Or
so the address is in Everett, so I'm technically an Everett resident, but if we want to get very specific about geography here, I probably spend more time in Chelsea than I do in Everett because most of my living space is in Chelsea, on the Chelsea side. So it's just sort of a fun little tie-in to Chelsea.
The kitchen is in Chelsea?
The kitchen is in Everett.
And the bedroom is in Chelsea?
The living room and the backyard are in Chelsea, and the rest of the house is in Everett.
Okay.
And the front door is in Everett, so technically we're Everett residents and 4th generation of Everett. So, but it is funny because I have Chelsea neighbors on one side, Everett neighbors on the other. If the power goes out, course, it always goes out in Everett, and then all of my next door neighbors have their lights. But so it's just kind of a small world. So it works so well because I do work for the Chelsea Record, I do the Everett Independent, I do a variety of cities, and Chelsea's right there. So when there's a snowstorm, for example, when I have to cover a snowstorm, I can go outside and I can get pictures on this side, pictures on that side, and I have both newspapers covered.
Yeah.
Wow, you don't even have to put your boots on.
Yeah, exactly. I wish it was that easy, but
That's great.
Yeah.
Wow, interesting. I wonder how many houses are like that.
I think very minimal. I think probably less than 5.
Less than 5. You're just
Yeah.
right on that
Right
very
in there.
border. That's very interesting. And you are a pet lover.
Very much so. I have
You
2
actually
cats.
came to one of our first meetings very early on,
Yep.
and you've been a great supporter in helping spread the word and doing everything that you can do and keeping in touch with the Chelsea Record and that kind of stuff. But tell us a little bit about where you developed your passion for animals.
Well, that's that was a personal passion my whole life. So I've always been very passionate about that. The photography developed that passion a little later on in life, but animals have always been near and dear to me. I grew up with pets. We're very passionate in my family about rescuing. So our policy is we never have looked for a pet. They've always come to us. So we have all kinds of crazy stories about how we've gotten our pets over the years. And currently we have 2 cats. We have an elderly cat that's 17 or so. I mean, I don't really know because I rescued her, and I can get into that later on today because that kind of ties into this talk. And then I have another cat that's probably about 8 years old, and he's a big tomcat that was sort of hanging out in my yard, and both of them became our pets.
And have you taken lots of pictures of them?
Yes, I take a lot of pictures of them on my cell phone. It's kind of hard to post them for studio shots. I don't think they're too cooperative. Cats kind of have a mind of their own.
Yeah. So I've taken a lot of pictures of my own cats with my cell phone, and I'm sure everybody has. But in terms of taking really good pictures of your pets, and I know in rescue we talk about this a lot with shelters, always wanting to get like the best picture. And you use the term photojournalism. So we're talking about a picture telling a story, and that's really important for us, whether it's a picture of our own pet telling a story of our pet and what their pet's doing, or the story of a rescue or of a feral cat that we're trapping and neutering and returning. And those are not easy clients for taking pictures of feral cats and that kind of thing. So I don't know, have you had any experience with sort of taking shots of animals sort of in action, in rescue, or out being trapped, that kind of thing?
I haven't been able to do a trapping story yet, but I do hope to do that in the near future. One of the most interesting stories I actually got to cover was about sled dogs. And so I had the opportunity to go out to Western Massachusetts and follow sled dogs around all day. And this woman was training for sled dog racing. And
Iditarod?
yeah, she was training for that. Yep. And she was a professional, and she lived off the grid in the middle of nowhere, and she would take her dogs to this field, and everything was self-sufficient. She would use local farms to get the meat to feed the dogs, like meat that wasn't, human consumption. And everything was just it was very interesting. And what I try to do with especially something like that, especially I was dealing with probably 14 or 15 dogs. And, of course, you want to interact with the animal, get them calm, if they're that kind of an animal. But my goal was to sort of catch them in action. I really like to capture the relationship between people and the animals. Because I think that makes it more relatable to the viewer, because they can imagine themselves in those shoes. So in that case, I focused on, the woman and her assistant interacting with these dogs, sort of showing affection, showing different elements of that. And of course, I did do some portraits of the dogs too while I was there, candid still style. Because I think it's the easiest way to work with animals. Is you don't want to try to put them in a studio setting and put them in a backdrop and try to make them sit still, because I don't think they're going to cooperate.
I have often wondered about Santa Claus pictures, but
That's
anyway.
yeah, that's very It's very hard, I would imagine. I haven't done quite that, so I try to get them as much as their natural element as I can. And one thing about all portraits, and this would apply to pets too, is the eyes show a lot of emotion, and that's where we connect with people and animals. And I think to get a good picture of your pet, unless it's sleeping, you want to focus on their eyes.
That's a good point. I really, didn't necessarily think about that. And we're also doing a lot of video these days too. I mean, with Instagram stories and Facebook stories and that kind of thing, we see a lot more videos happening. Do you recommend that folks just use their phones as their cameras? Or?
Absolutely. I was taught that the best camera that you have is the one that you have on you. So it's not necessarily the device you have, although it can help in certain circumstances, but it's about taking a good photo. So whatever tool you have is what you should use. And I'm really glad that you brought up taking pictures of your pets, because one thing I'd like to bring up is that it's very important to keep updated pictures of your pets, because in the event if they go missing, you want to have a picture available that's up to date, that shows the animal clearly, shows their face, shows any distinct markings. So, I mean, I would recommend regularly, we all love to take pictures of our pets that are doing cute things, but make sure that you have some documentation of your pet too through your photographs.
Right, excellent. With your Katie,
Color or black and white?
I work mostly in color, but a lot of times when I'm working with the newspaper, a lot of things end up in black and white, but I deliver everything in color usually, unless there's an artistic purpose for it being in black and white. But
this is a little off topic off of animals, but with your Katie Rogers art, I mean, are there certain genres that you really like taking pictures of, anything other than animals that interest you?
Well, one thing that I do love about photojournalism is that I can say when I was growing up that I wasn't the type of kid that necessarily knew what they wanted to be when I grew up. And another photographer said this to me recently, and I really liked this. He said, being a photographer is like going on a field trip every day. So therefore, there isn't one particular subject that I am partial to. I really like the element of experiencing new things and seeing new perspectives on every different assignment that I do. So it's really invigorating for me to be behind the scenes, be close up to things that maybe other people haven't had the opportunity to be close up to, and try to capture the essence of that to convey to other people that weren't able to be there.
And do you do shows?
Like galleries?
Yeah.
So actually one of the photos that I took I took it for the Chelsea Record, and I also contributed it to Hubcats. It was at the last rabies clinic, which I think was a few months ago.
Yeah, it was in May, I think it was.
Yeah, and one of the pictures I took at that, I entered it into a local Chelsea art contest, photography contest, I should say, and it won in the competition in the people category, and it will be on display in September in a gallery in Chelsea.
Fantastic!
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's great news. Maybe share with us a little bit of your experience, what you have seen through the lens when you've gone to those clinics.
So a lot of what I see at the clinics is I see people that love their pets. I see a very passionate community in Chelsea in particular, where people want to do the right thing for their pets, and it becomes very obvious to me that there is such a demand for organizations like Hubcats to be involved in Chelsea, because not everybody has the access to get their pets these vaccinations, even though they are willing to. So I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about people sometimes interpret people that don't get their vaccines as not being compliant, but I think sometimes it's just having those resources available, having the knowledge available, that makes all the difference.
What does the energy feel? I personally have not been at one of those clinics. What does the energy feel like?
Well, I'm always surprised by the turnout of how many people are there. You would think that they were giving out $1 million, because there's always a lot of people there. And I have to say, everybody there that volunteers is very diligent. They're very on top of keeping things moving, keeping things organized, keeping pets comfortable and happy. So, they have they make sure that cats are kept in an area where they're not being bothered by maybe a nervous dog. So I have to say there's a really positive energy. You can see people are passionate about their pets, they're passionate about animals, and the animals are also very excited because they get to be in a park usually and they're playing with new friends, and it's a great experience.
Good. You have a passion also for lost and found
Yes.
animals, and you are a administrator or moderator of a Facebook page that serves serves Chelsea as well as Everett, maybe a few other towns.
Yep.
Would you share with us about that?
Sure. I brought some stickers here, and that kind of has the little website. I stick these in places where people might see them
Well,
sometimes.
can I take one of those?
Of course. And
There we go. Lost pets.
so, yeah, this is you do have to have a Facebook account to access this. However, I have to stress the help of social media today is incredible because we do have the ability to post things instantly. We have a large audience. We don't have to worry about putting a sign up and having it ripped down or taken apart from the rain because we have this tool right at our fingertips that we can post lost pets right away and we can communicate with people all around our community. So our Facebook page has a lot of resources on it. It's free to join. There's nothing's for profit on there at all whatsoever. And I'm one of a few volunteers that helps moderate this. And I try to make them visually look nice so that way they
Great.
look, presentable and are kind of organized. And that's sort of where I ended up taking over because people needed help with the banners and the icons and stuff. And I helped out with that because I have a background in art, so I was able to visually make it a little bit cleaner. And then that just developed into moderating it, and there's all kinds of resources on there. So primarily what happens is somebody finds an animal or they're lost an animal, they post an updated picture, and we have some other information on there about what they should post as far as describing their pet, making sure that we know the address that it came from, the street, the phone number of the person to reach, and who that they should contact other than Facebook in order to make sure that their pet gets home safely.
How do you know if you've lost a pet? So my question is specifically, how many days do you wait? In terms of, finding pets, it's
For a
not the same.
cat.
Yeah, but,
You have an indoor, outdoor cat. How long do
Yeah.
you wait before you say, something's wrong, Sally's not coming home tonight?
Yeah, so that's it does vary person to person. Sometimes we have people post an hour into the pet being gone and then the pet shows up again that night, which is fine because it's a free resource, so it's easy enough to take it down. I would rather go on the side of caution and post if you know your pet. If it's an indoor outdoor cat and it doesn't come home at 6 o'clock like it always does, you might want to post it rather than wait a few days because sometimes that first few days is critical to making sure your pet comes home. However, that said, I don't want people to lose hope. If their pet has been gone for 2 weeks, it could still show up. There's been instances where I found animals months after they've been missing.
Right, those are the stories where we all start bawling our
Yeah,
eyes
exactly.
out and
But it
getting
happens
all
more
excited.
often than you think.
Right.
It happens on a regular basis. There was a pet missing on my street. She was a 20-year-old cat or so, and she was ancient, and the people were convinced that this cat must have passed away. And one day I'm sitting in my yard, and for some reason, I swear, animals gravitate towards people they know are going to help them. And I saw this like old raggedy cat walking through my yard, and I'm like, is that, whatever the cat's name was? And sure enough, it was that cat. And it was gone for weeks and weeks, so.
the photo was enough, not the chip. Sometimes you have a chip, so.
I would, and that's another thing, I would recommend for the main thing we want to focus on too is pet loss prevention. So before they get out, we have resources too that we recommend looking into to make sure that you prevent it. And one of those things is making sure that you have your animal microchipped, and we're very pro advocates of spaying and neutering.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. And the microchipping certainly does make sense. You mentioned some of the other resources, some of the things that I've heard about, or some concerns that I've heard about with regards to using Facebook as a way of reuniting pets or reporting missing pets, is that somebody will scoop up a cat, take it to a shelter 40 miles away, post it on Facebook, and feel like they've done their job, but never put a flyer up, never talked to a neighbor, never, done that local due diligence. How does the whole social media and the local connections, how does that all fit together?
So kind of on the contrary of what I was saying earlier about like post urgently if your animal goes missing, on the opposite end of that, I would say particularly with cats, a lot of people post that they found a cat that wasn't necessarily homeless or missing, and it might have just been a cat that goes indoor and outdoor. And sometimes those people are quick to make the assumption that this cat needs help, and that's not always the case. With experience, usually you kind of get a way to feel it out, but the average citizen that's just trying to be a good Samaritan, sometimes they don't know better. So it's good to still post it because the rest of us can sort of help and gauge whether or not
But
that...
maybe not scoop the cat up
Right, so I
and
wouldn't-
rush it off to a shelter far, far, in a land far, far away.
Correct. Unless, of course, the animal is in critical danger
Right.
or injured, then you definitely want to get the appropriate help. But if it's a happy cat and it's coming up to you and it's just rubbing on your legs, I wouldn't be alarmed by that unless it becomes a regular occurrence or if it seems like it's in danger.
Right, that likes what you're serving better than...
Yeah, that's a lot of the cases. Yep.
What's the relation? Do you have animal control officers? Are they involved? Do they keep an eye on this page, or is there a relationship with the local animal control officers too?
Yes. So I am personal friends with the Everett Animal Control Officer, and I have a very good relationship with the Chelsea Animal Control Officer as well. Both of them, do their due diligence, and if we have a concern, we reach out to them immediately. One of the things we encourage on the Facebook page, in addition to posting, is to alert the appropriate animal control officer, and we have the phone numbers listed to reach those people directly for the communities that we have and the surrounding communities. So that's another resource that we definitely like to be on the good side of our animal control officers and have them collaborate with the volunteers in our community.
Do you find that there's like a higher season for more posts than other times of the year?
Absolutely. So the worst time of year is actually 4th of July, I would say. And there's a few reasons for that. The reason is because, that I've determined, is a lot of the time somebody posts and they say, oh no, Sparky got out, he heard a loud bang, the fireworks next door scared him. Or, we brought Sparky to the fireworks because we didn't think he would get scared, and then he ran away. Now that one I get very frustrated with because I really try to put out a lot of warnings before 4th of July and say, don't bring your dog, it's not worth the risk. Another thing is people are having summer barbecues, so the doors are open and, guests are in and out of your house getting stuff for the grill. So a lot of times pets sneak out during that season. So yeah, that's, I would say 4th of July, I think statistically, is the worst time for lost pets.
There was a city in Canada, I think, that did just this year silent fireworks.
Oh, really? I didn't even know this existed.
Yeah. So that might be something for Chelsea to consider.
That would be an awesome idea.
I don't get it.
I don't know how they do it, but it was silent fireworks. I'll pull the article up. We'll have to post it for consideration.
A light show and no noise.
I know. I mean, it's definitely something to consider rather than saying no fireworks.
Right.
At all. People want to be able to celebrate, and but people do want to throw those things that pop on the ground or whatever. They're always throwing stuff around and snapping and popping and all that stuff. So. Firecrackers and
cherry
stuff.
bombs
And all that stuff. So yeah, 4th of July is definitely a stressful period for dogs. And for cats, would you say the same is true, or maybe a little different? Or
I mean, I'm not an expert on the matter, but I would say that, be on the side of caution and keep them in. And I think for cats, it's not necessarily the loud noise that happens with them that they escape. It's the people going in and out of the house during the barbecue.
yeah,
And then what happens is the loud noise might startle them, and now they go into an area that they are not familiar with.
yeah.
So I think that's where the problem lies with cats related to that holiday.
Yeah, and I always found Halloween to be kind of stressful. At least
That's
when I
another
had
one.
little kids. For my cats, I was always, I would put them in a bedroom, like away from it all, but they'd freak out because then they didn't have their house, but I had all the neighborhood kids coming in and out, and, and my kids looked really weird and freaky, and, my cats didn't know what they were
You
doing.
have black cats?
And
I do.
I don't right now, but I have in my past. So, and I love black cats. They're my favorite.
Yeah.
So
My black cat is named Spooky in the essence of Halloween, I guess. So.
Yeah, I had a Spooky.
Yeah?
Spooky passed away, but Spooky was all black. Yes.
Yep, mine is too.
She was my meanest cat that I ever had.
Mine too. So must be in the name.
Cousins.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I gave her the benefit of the doubt because she was declawed. Not by me, but she came to me that way. I adopted her when she was 10 years old. So
Right.
she'd had a previous life or two, and I don't think she had I don't think she was happy being declawed.
I don't blame her.
I know. I know. I would understand that.
My cat, Sybil, was 26 years old and a black cat, polydactyl.
I have a polydactyl. That's what my senior cat is. Her name is
Yeah.
Polly.
So you have Polly and Spooky.
Yep, Polly and Spooky.
Wow. So if I wanted to take pictures of my own cats, or for our website, for the Hubcats website, for anyone that wants to sort of document and tell a story, as you're talking about, I mean, telling stories is what brings in donations and that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
I know you said bring your phone along or use whatever tools you have. Anything else that you think about when you're trying to tell a story with your photos?
So when I'm trying to tell a story, I try to avoid posing too much. I sort of let things unfold how they would naturally, and I try to be the observer. I think posing has its place in certain circumstances, but I think when you're showing maybe a cat trapping story, what you want to focus on is maybe not a picture of the woman or man that is volunteering, just smiling at the camera, but you might want to show them in the dirt on their hands and knees trying to coax a cat out of a
Basement or
exactly
something like that. Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, it's exhausting. I'm going to tell you, it's exhausting. Is trying to capture what we all see and hear and we feel, the stories. And we've talked about one of our volunteers, Carol, who's out there every night is a whole nother story.
We know Carol.
We all know Carol. And every night it's probably more than one story that she goes through. And even just to capture one of those stories, we've talked about a kitty named Velcro, whose jaw was broken. Sweet, sweet cat. And he's been treated up at our partners, the Cape Ann Animal Aid. But he's got a lot of medical help that needs to be done. But he's going to find the right home eventually. And but he's one story of hundreds and hundreds of these cats and dogs that come through us, and it's a lot of work and time to do that, but it feels like it's very rewarding.
Yes.
Stacy, I'm thinking we've helped north of 1,800 cats, but how many are there in Chelsea, Everett area?
Right. Thousands. There are thousands, and they all
Tens of thousands, maybe.
Yeah, and they're all telling stories. So, maybe we should put a plea out for folks to share their stories with us.
Yeah, I'd love to hear about, I know every single one of the pets that I own like I said, we've never actually formally adopted anybody. They sort of come to us in their own terms, which I'm not discouraging adoption. I think if you want an animal, definitely go to the shelter. I think that each animal has their own story. I know that, you know, to this day, like the dog that I grew up with, my dad is always like telling the story about, you know, her life and so.
Yeah, I mean, if there are folks out there, please, you know, go to our Facebook page and share your stories, you know, because it's very helpful for them to be captured. And I don't think, you know, one or, you know, you are only one person, I'm one person, but if people share, then it would be a lot of stories all put together.
Exactly.
Stacy, Hubcats is an assist and resource organization.
Yep.
But we are not a shelter. So if the shelters you are speaking of, or generically, Katie, you're speaking of, it's MSPCA or ARL or, you know, Cape Ann or I
Right.
don't know.
Well, and Broken Tail. I mean, there are a lot
Broken
of, we have a
Tail.
lot of partnering organizations that partner with us. About 6 different organizations take cats from Chelsea that are deemed to be strays that need to be placed. Broken Tail Rescue, which has a facility in PetSmart in Cambridge, they have an adoption center there, and a lot of the cats from Chelsea end up there, as well as Cape Ann Animal Aid. The Friends of the Marblehead Shelter also helps us. Peabody Pals, sometimes Northeast Animal Shelter. So there are quite a few different transfer organizations that we work with, and the reason we're not a shelter is it's just a huge resource expense to run a shelter. It's very, very expensive, and we just don't have that type of team in place, or we don't have a building too. We don't have the facility. And there were enough adoption partners to work with us so that then we were able to focus on really the needs of the pets in the community too, as well as the community cats. So we were able to provide more spay-neuter resources as well as vaccination and microchipping. And, you know, it was interesting, I guess at the last clinic that we had, there were quite a few people who showed up and their pets had already been microchipped and vaccinated at earlier clinics. So we're starting to see, you know, repeat customers. And the other thing we're seeing a lot of is that more and more people are bringing more animals, in terms of like a family will bring 6 cats.
Yes, I've seen that.
And so having a lot of multiple cats, there are a lot of families in Chelsea that have multiple animals, and they're now figuring out, you know, they might have brought 1 or 2 in the past, but now they're like, okay, I think this is okay, we're okay. They're going to bring the whole family, which is fantastic. It's wonderful, because it's scary to trust us, you know,
Strangers.
with their animals, and I think there's a level of trust which we're really thrilled to see in Chelsea.
Right, and I think that there's a good distinction between what Hubcats does and what the local shelters do, because I think Hubcats has its own purpose. The local shelters have a very important role. However, they don't have the capabilities, on the other hand, to be keeping up with outreach and to be involved with people's personal pets. And without Hubcats having to be responsible for a specific shelter, it allows you to have the opportunity to work more on this outreach, work more on the education part of it, the awareness part of it, and helping people that already have pets.
Right, and ensure that they're able to stay in homes with them, you know, for the lifetime of the pet.
Right.
Too, which is the name of the game. We don't want anyone to have to relinquish their pet for, you know, for any reason, if we can play a role in that at all, you know, or I guess it's called pet retention is the phrase that we focus on. Before we turn to our Hubcat Chelsea announcements, Katie, do you have any last thoughts or anything you'd like to share with our viewers today?
So again, I just want to encourage people to go to this website. If you're on Facebook, join. Even if you don't have a lost pet currently, it's great. The more people we have in there, the better, because essentially the more eyes that are on these lost pet pages, the more likely animals are to get home. And it's great resources on how to prevent your pet from getting lost and how you can help other people, and just to be aware of, like we were talking about 4th of July, Halloween, be on top of that stuff. This is the place to be. And there's plenty of other resources which are connected through this group all around Massachusetts. So even if you are not just a Chelsea resident or around one of the neighboring communities, there's tons of other resources. I know Missing Dogs Massachusetts is a great organization that does a lot of outreach. There's so many resources like this, and this is a great place to start if you're a Chelsea resident.
I mean, and you are specific to these 4 towns.
Within reason, because we don't want to exclude anybody. So if somebody is in Wakefield and they found our resource, we want to welcome them, and we will try to connect them to the right resources that'll be more tailored to their specific town. However, we don't want to discourage anybody. Sometimes we even get posts from Everett, Washington. People are just sort of disoriented.
Okay, got you.
And what we try to do is we try to reach them to the Washington group. So we don't want to exclude anybody. So anybody that thinks that this resource might be helpful to them is welcome to join. There's no exclusions.
Excellent. Fantastic. So for our announcements, Hubcats Chelsea's been busy getting as much funding as possible. We were able this past summer to get funding to be able to continue our programs, which is fantastic, through the Carly Foundation, as well as the MAC grant from the Spay Neuter license plate. I do not have one of those plates because I'm not from Massachusetts anymore, but do you have a Spay Neuter license plate or no?
No.
I had one in the early days. Mine was number 523, so I was in that first 1,000 run, but then when I moved, I had to give that up. But at some day, maybe we'll have a parade of anybody who has a Spay Neuter license plate, like driving through Chelsea or something, going down Broadway, I don't know. But the Spay Neuter license plate funds have been really great through the Massachusetts Animal Coalition in gifting us $5,000 to help support spaying and neutering cats. And we also completed a Petco Foundation grant, which is great. And we've done some outreach and some tabling. We did some this past summer. And you had mentioned the gardening club?
The community gardens weekend.
And then there was also a science fest and a food truck festival during the summer. So we've been getting into that education and outreach. I think that's sort of one of our next steps in doing more of that outreach. And we have a little subcommittee of people who are interested in working on that and doing that. We're also actively looking for donations for our fall auction, and you can also check out our fall auction. We have some early items that are going to be posted too, so you can always check that out at hubcatschelsea.com.
The auction is in support of the Christmas fundraiser.
Yep, it's our holiday fundraiser. It's sort of a year-end appeal. So probably this is more information than you might want even to know, but what happens is our grant funding runs out. And so we have to raise money to bridge the gap in the year when our grant funding runs out to when we hopefully can get more grant funding. But in order to ask for more money after your grant runs out in the nonprofit world, you have to have the money run out, and then you re-ask, and then you hopefully get the money. But that takes about 2 to 3 months. So we have to fundraise regularly to help bridge the gap. It's really tough being a nonprofit organization, and I know there are a lot of nonprofits in Chelsea, so I would figure most people could appreciate that comment. Fundraising is always hard and challenging, and there's always a lot going on. And so that's why we have to have this fundraiser. So I hope folks will participate. Check it out online at hubcatschelsea.com. We'll have information posted there. I know that we have tickets to Hamilton as an auction item. We have a lot of gift cards to Amazon and Dunkin' Donuts and Starbucks and the traditional things like that. We have some handmade items. So, feel free to check out that auction and bid often and bid high, as I say. We always can use volunteers, and we need help with trapping cats and fundraising and just responding to calls. In general, we meet on the second Tuesday at the Chelsea Police Department, but I highly recommend you check out our Facebook page. We always have that pinned at the top of our page is when our next meeting is going to be. And there's this great picture that Gary has put up with this like conference table with all these cats hanging off the conference table. So just look for the picture with all the cats, and that'll tell you when our next meeting is going to be. Yeah, so Katie, I don't know if there's anything else that you'd like to share with our viewers today.
I think that's everything. So, I mean, I just encourage everybody to go online and get connected with those lost and found pet pages and make sure that they have up-to-date photos of their animals at all times, because you never know.
Yeah, and how can people find you again? What's your website?
So mine's katierogersart.com, and it's spelled KATYROGERS art, ART.com, and you'll see all my photos on there. Well, a lot of them. And yeah, so there's that.
Laura, any final comments today?
I think you've covered all the bases.
So for folks who might be interested in donating to Hubcats Chelsea during this holiday season, please feel free to go to www.hubcatschelsea.com. Find us on Facebook. If you do have a lost pet, please check out the lost pet page too. Our phone number is 857-776-2287. Hubcatschelsea@gmail.com is our mailing address. And I want to thank you again for tuning in to our show today and checking us out. We hope we'll see you next time. And please remember that there'll be no cat or dog left behind in Chelsea. Take care, and we'll see you soon.